You are watching a clip from the John Perry channel, Genetics and Evolution.
Have you focused much on the origin of signaling? I know Stuart West, who...
Well, I wrote two papers jointly with John Krebs about signaling, and the burden of those really was to refute the then fashionable idea among ethologists that animal communication is all about cooperative transfer of information. Mm-hmm. So the assumption was made by people like my old maestro, Nico Tinbergen, and others of his colleagues, was that social life needs kind of oiling. The wheels need oiling by smooth running communication. And the signaler needs to be understood by the receiver of the signal and vice versa. What Krebs and I substituted for that was a more manipulative approach. We thought that the selfish gene way of looking at life was not really compatible with this highly cooperative vision of animal signals. Mm-hmm. And so when something like a male bird sings and this causes the ovaries of the female to grow, which it does, so that's known physiologically. It's been shown in doves and in canaries. We saw it, Krebs and I saw it as a manipulation. We made the analogy with the human experimenter who, by injecting hormones into the female bird, could cause her ovaries to grow, or the physiologist who sticks electrodes into the brain of an animal and makes it behave rather like a puppeteer pulling strings. We saw the influence of one animal on another via signals as equivalent to that. So the male bird is trying to influence the behavior of the female bird or of another male, perhaps, to intimidate. If the male bird was a physiologist capable of injecting hormones or capable of sticking electrodes into the brain of the rival or the prospective mate, then he would do so, but he can't do that. What he can do is enter the brain of the victim, use the word advisedly, via the portholes which already exist, which are the eyes and ears and nose, etc. And that's what he does. And so animal signals, Krebs and I saw as manipulation, direct influences on the physiology of the victim animal. And I tie this up with my idea of the extended phenotype, which is another book that I wrote, where the behavior of the victim can be thought of as part of the phenotypic expression of genes in the manipulator. Mm-hmm. And the cuckoo is a classic example of this, where the cuckoo is a parasite, but unlike parasites which live inside the body of the host, where parasitologists have already established very strong evidence for direct physiological evidence of the parasite on the host, I would call extended phenotypic expression of the genes of the parasite in the phenotype of the host. In the case of the cuckoo, the parasite is not living inside the host. The parasite is sitting outside the host, but nevertheless exerting just the same kind of influence as a parasite of, say, a fluke, say, or a tapeworm, living inside the host. This is direct manipulation. And Krebs and I generalized this to the notion that all animal signals are manipulative in the same kind of way as the cuckoo manipulating its host. I call that action at a distance.
Well, would it always be considered manipulative if it's helping both individuals? Because there are a bunch of communications that happen that help both individuals. Like,
exactly. Quite.
You could say that the mating call is one. Like the female wants to reproduce as well as the male. It's in both of their best interest, right?
Good point. And in those cases where it is in both of their best interests, then the point we made was that rather than shouting, which is what much of animal signals is about, either literally auditory shouting or visual shouting, bright colors, loud voices, and so on, you don't need that. If the victim is no longer a victim, but is actually a cooperator, it actually wants to be manipulated, so to speak, then the signal ceases to be a shout and becomes what we call a conspiratorial whisper. Mm-hmm. And so you tend to get a decrease in intensity of the signal. In those cases where the signal increases, in those cases where the signal gets louder and louder over evolutionary time, or brighter and brighter over evolutionary time, then our interpretation would be that that is a manifestation of resistance on the part of the signalee, on the part of the victim. So where the victim is resisting being manipulated, you expect the signal to become louder and louder. And where the victim is cooperating, wants to be manipulated, in other words, the word manipulation isn't really even appropriate, where that happens, then the signal drops in volume and becomes a conspiratorial whisper. So quiet that maybe the experiment, maybe the ethologist scarcely even notices it.
So that was just a clip from my conversation with Richard Dawkins. You can see the whole thing. There's a link to that down below. Subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed it. I upload clips pretty regularly, talks and conversations and presentations that I've done on genetics and evolution, and I am gearing up to start doing weekly videos again here that are completely new, completely fresh.